I bet you would have come across headlines like this quite recently, maybe the end of last year. We have 12 years to limit climate change catastrophe, warns the United Nations. Now, those headlines and headlines like them came out in October last year because these people, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, wrote a report, and that report was Special Report 1.5. To put that in a bit of context, 3 years before, our country and virtually every country in the world signed up for something called the Paris Agreement. I bet that you've heard about it, right? And as signatories to the Paris Agreement, our country and every country in the world that signed up for the Paris Agreement agreed to strengthen our response against the threat of climate change by holding the increase in global temperatures to 2 degrees Celsius, while at the same time pursuing efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, back then, they didn't really know what the difference was between 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius in terms of the impact on our world. So they tasked scientists to find out. And the results of that finding out, well, that was Special Report 1.5, and there it is. And I'm going to share with you their main conclusions. What they said was this. They said 2 degrees Celsius against pre-industrial levels is much, much, much worse for millions upon millions of people on this planet, and indeed for the other species we share this planet with. Oh yeah, and that we must limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. That's not safe. That's still catastrophic, but it's far less catastrophic than 2 degrees Celsius. We're still going to lose 70 to 90% of our coral reefs, for instance, at 1.5 degrees Celsius. Which means, well, we can't dig up any new fossil fuels. Even if we know it's in the ground, we can't dig it up, and we can't go looking for any new stuff either because there's a carbon budget and we are severely overspent. Oh yeah, and despite the headlines, 12 years to save the planet, of course it's 11 years now to save the planet, well, there's no time to lose. We must act now. Why? Because, well, we're going to reach 1.5 degrees Celsius against pre-industrial levels somewhere between 2030 and 2052. Oh yeah, and not only that, current pledges are insufficient. So all those countries that signed up for the Paris Agreement, their pledges, if they were realized, and there's no guarantees that they will be, but if they committed to their pledges, if those pledges became a reality, we're still going to hit 3 degrees Celsius against pre-industrial levels. So the science is clear. The scientists themselves, of course, are clear. This is Deborah Roberts. She's the co-chair of the Impacts Committee. That is the committee that wrote the report. She says, we must act now. This is the largest clarion bell from the science community. And I hope it mobilizes people and dents the mood of complacency. This is Eric Solheim. He's the executive director of the United Nations Environment Programme, the sort of parent body of the IPCC. He says of the report, it's like a deafening, piercing smoke alarm going off in the kitchen. We have to put out the fire. And this is Professor Schellnhuber. He's a climatologist. He's actually the founder of the Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research. He says climate change is now reaching the end game. The issue is the very survival of our civilization. So the scientists are clear, the science is clear.